Crikey, mateys. This is U.S. Home Talk. Good afternoon and welcome back. We are live here every Wednesday at noon, Central Standard Time, and on demand at ushometalk.com. We're also everywhere you find your podcasts. I'm your host, Mike Overson with Luminate Home Loans. Your other hosts are Jason Walgrave with a Remax Advantage Plus and the Walgrave Real Estate Group. And we also have Marcus Walgrave with Hague Realtors. We're going to be taking your questions during the show today. So anything and everything dealing with real estate, mortgages, you can certainly reach out to us. We want to make the show interactive. So definitely join our conversation today. And you can either call us or text us or go online to communicate with us. So the call in and the text in number is 612-234-7585. Again, 612-234-7585. Otherwise, you can go to Facebook and watch our live feed there, and you can type in a question right in the comment section, and we'll answer it live during our show. We're also going to be answering any questions that came in throughout the week. So if you are catching our show at a later time on your podcast service and you want to reach out to us, just feel free to go to US Home Talk, and you can submit your question and all that fun stuff to us there, and we will make sure we get back to you and answer your question on the next show. Fellas, did you like my intro?
Your intro is fantastic, Mike. It is fantastic. I'm wondering why Marcus in my head looks so much larger than your head. So, I mean,
it's because you guys are sitting much closer to you.
It's not because our brains are bigger and we're smarter.
No, you got the BHS, bloated head syndrome. It's common in the it's common.
Genetics.
Oh,
it is. Yep.
It's genetics. All right, real quick before we get started. Yesterday, my son Joseph's birthday. Happy birthday, Joseph. Love you, buddy. At 11 years old. We went to the Timberwolves game last night.
Hey,
big win for the T-Wolves. They're 2-0 ahead in the series, so that was a lot of fun. But just wanted to give a shout out to Joseph. Love you, buddy.
Nice, good work. Yeah, and the T-Wolves, man, it's an exciting year. See how far they can take it. We've never won the NBA championship, though, right?
Nope.
I think we made it there one time when we had Garnett.
Did we make it to the finals?
no, I don't think we did.
We didn't make it
past
to the finals?
Lakers.
We didn't make it. We made it to the Western the Western Conference finals
championship. Yeah,
Yep.
a couple times maybe.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
I think that happened a couple times. But
this could be our year. I mean, you look at our record of all the Western Conference teams. We got a winning record against the Nuggets. We actually had a losing record against the Suns. We lost every single time in the regular season to the Suns, and we are up 2-0 on them right now. So it'll be exciting here to see what happens.
Awesome.
You know, the T-Wolves are super interesting, right? I mean, you look at them and not only are they performing very well, and everybody's considering that Anthony Edwards is potentially going to become the best player in the league here in a couple years. But then behind the scenes, you got the whole. It was supposed to be a sale, it was a month ago.
Yeah.
And current owner is like, nope, you guys missed the deadline, not selling. So that's really interesting too, because I mean it's if they were to win and then you had this kind of this turmoil going on in the back, it's interesting.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. They got a lot of good players, a lot of good bench players. It's exciting. They're a lot of fun to watch.
Absolutely. And the playoff atmosphere there at Target Center is killer.
Good grief. Last night was nuts.
I bet it was loud.
Loud and flames coming out of the basketball hoops. Dude, it was cool. It was wild.
Yeah, playoff. I mean, because we don't get the playoff basketball every year up here, right? So it's a big deal. They're rolling out the red carpet there. Yes. I mean, they're doing a great job. It is a fun atmosphere. What also is fun is real estate. I mean, if you had to go pick, it's like, do I want to be a real estate agent to talk about real estate or go to a T-Wolves playoff game? Probably about equal, right? Equal excitement, I would imagine. Yep. So what we're going to talk about today is buyers and how do you position yourself as a buyer to get your offer accepted in today's market. I don't care where you go across the country. I'm sure most of the country is just like our Minnesota market that me and Jason are in, and just like the South Dakota market that Marcus is in. There's a lot of buyer competition, right? Especially in the upper Midwest. the April, May, June, that's our spring. That's the hottest time in our spring market. There's the most buyer competition out there. And so now how do you position yourself to get your offer accepted when there's limited inventory and you're competing against other buyers? So what I want to do is I want to try to quantify this with numbers. Okay. So we're going to run it kind of almost like a football game, right? In football, you have a touchdown that's worth 6 points. You got a field goal that's worth 3 points. You have an extra point that's worth 1. You got a 2-point conversion that's worth 2. So you have all these different scoring, types that have different points to them. The list that we're going to talk about, we're going to try to put a point system on them so people can be like, okay, how important is it to do double earnest money versus have a flexible close date? We're going to try to quantify that so people can be like, I thought that, this was going to be the difference maker, but you're telling me it's only worth, an extra point on your scale. Right. So I have the Walgrave list. I don't know. Do I dare share this on the screen? I got the Walgrave 19 strategies, right, of how to win in a multiple offer situation. So we're going to go from top to bottom on this list. And then we're just going to kind of point scale it. Okay. So number one on the list here is, how do you separate yourself as a buyer and win in multiple offers? You send a letter from the buyer with a photo of the buyer to the seller.
So this is something that has changed a little bit. Agents cannot be involved in these letters, and so the letters can't go through buyers agents and listing agents. We're not allowed to facilitate the letter from the buyer to the seller. However, buyers can do whatever they want to do on their own. I'll give you an example. Clients of mine that I was working with last month, they had a property that they wanted to make an offer on. Beautiful property, kind of based on the personal property that was in the house. They guesstimated that the seller was of similar age and maybe of some similar interest, just based on what was in the house. And so they wrote a letter. They left it on the island of the home, not directed by me, or they just did it on their own. Well, we got the property, we got it accepted. There was not multiple offers, but we were only one day on the market, and so my guess is that there was going to be multiple offers by the end of the weekend. I think for many sellers, it's really important to them who's buying the house. More important in some cases than how much they're paying for the house. If you love your house and you got great relationships with the neighbors, you care who's buying the house, right? That matters to you. And so, how letters are delivered, that has changed over the last year and a half. But if a buyer feels that there's, a connection there with that seller, that can be a good way to, build rapport with the seller. Now, it doesn't always matter. Some sellers could care less. They're just, look, sell my house for the most amount of money. I don't care who buys it or what terms or anything. Just give me the most amount of money. I'm out. I'm moving to Guatemala. Don't care. And so, so it just depends on if that's something that, that the buyer feels that they want to do, and they can do that directly with the seller.
How many percentage of offers? How many would you say that buyer offers going in percentage wise have some sort of letter-ish going in with them?
A year and a half ago, before we were not allowed to participate in that, agents that is, we were doing it on almost every single one. But now I don't see it very often. Maybe 1 in 20.
Okay.
Maybe 1 in 20. Because buyers just, they're either they don't feel comfortable going directly to the seller, or they just, they don't want to take those extra steps. So it's not happening as much as it used to. But that's mainly because as agents, we can't participate in those letters.
Gotcha. Point scale. Give it a point. Let's give all these a point scale of basically like a football scale. It's a 1 point play or it's a 6 point play. What would you say that gives you for points competing against other buyers?
Overall,
1.
It's probably
PAT.
Yeah. It's a PAT, just a 1 point. 2 point conversion, maybe 2 point conversion.
Maybe a safety.
Maybe a safety, 2-pointer.
Maybe.
1 to 2 points is all you get for that. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Next on the list, highest net offer possible. So you're going to net the seller the highest dollar amount for their sale. Okay.
That's gonna be 6 for sure.
We don't have to explain that one, right? It's just
Right.
you're going to make a strong offer, and you're going to go in there and maybe do an escalation clause. Just say, I'm going to pay $1,000 over the next highest offer to make sure that you're the highest bid on there. So that's pretty easy to understand how that works. But you're saying point scale?
Oh, it's the highest on the point scale without any question. And the reason I say that is because most sellers, that's what's most important to them, is the highest net amount for the sale of their home. So I think it's got to have the highest points.
Touchdown with the 2-point conversion.
That's a touchdown and a 2-point conversion right there.
I would agree.
Okay.
I would agree with Marcus. Yep. That's 8-point play.
That's an 8-point play right there. Okay. So, I mean, that's basically the highest you can get, right, in our scale here. Let's go to the next in the line. Increase your earnest money. All right. Industry standard earnest money is what?
1%.
1% of the purchase price of the house. Okay. So when it comes to earnest money, like when you say increase it, what are you talking? $500 or do you double it? Do you triple it? What do you got there?
I mean, it depends if it's financed or if it's cash, right? If it's a financed offer, the increase in earnest money is less valuable because the offer is contingent on financing anyway, right? If it's a cash offer, well, that earnest money has more value because it's not contingent on financing or appraisal or anything. Once you're through, let's say you have an inspection, once you're through that inspection, that earnest money is hard, and so, I think that it's more valuable on a cash offer. But I had one last week where we had an earnest money that was 4 times what we were expected to put down, and the seller came back and they wanted. I called the agent. I said, "Would your seller want for a closing date?" They told me, and so we put that in there. Well, that wasn't what the seller wanted. They wanted a closing date further out. Go figure, right? So they counter back and said, "No, we want longer time." And we said, "Okay, fine. We'll give you more time." But the earnest money is going back down to 1%. Seller didn't care. They didn't care at all. They just wanted the later closing date. So, I think, I don't know. It's probably worth 3 points, and I mean, what do you think, Marcus?
Well, I mean, it's interesting, right? I mean, different markets. You guys up there in the Twin Cities area, myself being in the Sioux Empire of Sioux Falls, South Dakota area. I can't tell you how many times, I don't know how it's still what it is, but we don't see 1% earnest monies, dollar amounts on our purchase contracts.
What do you guys see?
I mean, it's alarmingly low. It's if we're talking like a under $300,000 house, it's not uncommon to see only $500.
Holy cow!
You can get into like a $500,000 house and maybe $1,500. And so that this was something that having conversations with you, Jason, being my mentor over the last 10 years. I mean that's that 1% minimum standard practice. What I've worked with my clients, I say, hey, this is what you should do. It's going to make a difference. I mean, it makes a world of difference for myself and the clients I work for down here. So I mean. Very interesting. I think that's just something to highlight. I mean, we talk about this on the show all the time. Make sure you're working with professionals in your market because it's just different. And so find out what is normal in your market, and then if you are looking to go above and beyond, go from there. But first, make sure you align yourself with somebody who knows what they're doing in that market, and you're really going to be able to stand out.
So what you're saying, Marcus, is that it matters. The higher earnest money in your marketplace plays a big role.
Without any doubt, yeah, because it's just not that common.
Got it.
If for a $500,000 house, if the buyer puts $5,000 down or more, that's going to be perceived as like, whoa, this is awesome. These buyers get it.
They're serious.
They're serious.
Yeah, definitely. Yep.
And,
they're and being licensed in South Dakota and Minnesota, I see the purchase agreement in Minnesota and the purchase contract in South Dakota. And when it pertains to earnest money, those contracts are different. And so just knowing the difference between, what goes on with earnest money and whether, like you said, Jason, whether it's hard or not, and whether it's contingent or not, things of that nature. There's verbiage in the Minnesota contract that's not in the South Dakota contract. So it's just a different world.
So what would you give it for? Well, let's rewind. So for people who might not know what earnest money is, so earnest money is money that you're going to give to the seller when you submit your offer to that seller, right? And that money gets held in escrow. So if that seller accepts your offer, that money is going to get held in the escrow account. And if you, Mr. Buyer or Mrs. Buyer, don't follow the contract, right? Hit your timelines or something. If you try to back out late enough in the game, the seller gets to keep your earnest money, right? So there's value to that. And Marcus is shaking his head.
Not in South Dakota.
No?
No, both parties, it sits in escrow, and both parties have to agree upon the release of the earnest money. And then, in a sense, you go into a phase of negotiations. If both parties cannot agree to how that earnest money is being released, then nobody gets it. It just sits in the escrow, and you have to take matters and maybe with a real estate attorney and address it that way. So.
Well, and at that point, earnest money sounds worthless to me in South Dakota.
Well,
if a seller doesn't have the right, if Mr. Buyer doesn't follow a contract and perform in that contract the way it's written, you know what I mean? Then what's now the seller has their house tied up on the market for how long? Let's say it's a 30-day process, and all at the end, the buyer's like, nah, I guess I just don't want to buy the house anymore. Mm-hmm. How's the seller compensated for, holding their house off the market, not being able to sell anyone and not do anything with that house because I'm working with you, Mr. Buyer, allow you time to get your loan done or whatever and perform on this contract. Mm-hmm. If the earnest money, if that carrot has not hung out there that the seller can say, hey, you don't do this, I get this, right? Then is there any worth to it?
Well, that's a go ahead, Marcus.
I was gonna say there's a reason why a seller doesn't deposit that money, and it sits in escrow. For these, for this reason that we're kind of discussing, and so, there's, if you're talking about having to go to court over earnest money, we all know that's not.
No one gets it.
That's going to be a lose-lose situation. Yeah. So
they,
I mean, there's still skin in the game. It's not, but I mean, it's the contracts are just written different. Verbiage is different.
Gotcha. Okay.
So just to be clear, Mike, in order for earnest money to be released, both buyer and seller have to sign a cancellation. And in that cancellation, it directs where that earnest money goes. So either it gets refunded to the buyer or it gets retained by the seller. Both buyer and seller have to sign that in order for earnest money to get released. If they do not agree on it, then a cancellation won't be in effect, which means the seller can't resell the property because it's still under contract. Now, how do you overcome that? Well, one of the parties can file what's called statutory cancellation, and that's cancellation by court order, which takes about 30 days. Judge will look at the case and he'll say, okay, yep, the earnest money should go here based on the contract. Contingent on financing offers, that earnest money is refundable if the financing falls through. So it's tough because there's earnest money, there's good faith put up, but now you can make the earnest money non-refundable. You can write that in the contract. You can make non-refundable earnest money. You can write in the contract that after the inspection period, the seller gets the earnest money because it is non-refundable. So there's no contingencies tied to the earnest money. So I mean, you certainly can do additional things. Let's say a buyer comes in and they're ultra whatever, they're a cash buyer, they're ultra confident, they want to sweeten the deal. Maybe that's part of their offer. Earnest money can go directly to the seller right now. We're not going to do an inspection. We want the property. You can have the earnest money. It doesn't go to the broker's account. Well, and you write in the contract it's non-refundable. So now you're doing things that are outside the normal way of how a transaction is typically done in Minnesota or South Dakota. But earnest money's got a lot of ifs to it, right? I mean, it's just well, if you get it if this happens, or you get it if that happens, or I mean, the reality is, most of the time the sellers do not get to keep their earnest money. And the reason for that is because most offers are contingent on financing. If the financing falls through, they're not going to get to keep their earnest money. Now, if a buyer, 1 week before closing, they call up and they're just like, I don't want to buy the property anymore. Well, I mean, that's a reason to lose your earnest money, to forfeit it to the seller. So it depends on what the reason is for canceling. So I mean, there's value to it, but there's also strings attached to it as well.
Yeah. I was in my head, I was thinking right in Minnesota, there's a written statement. You send this written statement out saying that the loan is conditionally approved. Here's the conditions that need to be met. As soon as you send that written statement to the seller, earnest money basically goes hard, right? Mm-hmm. You either got to close on that property, and if you don't, seller's going to keep the money. So let's say we send the written statement out. Let's say we're clear to close. We're 2 days before closing. Mm-hmm. Buyer comes to you, Jason. You're the buyer's agent. Okay. Buyer comes to you and is like, I'm not going to close on this property. I don't want to buy it anymore. Mm-hmm. At that point, because you're so late in the game, seller's probably going to keep that earnest money, right? Well, if you push it that far.
In that example, right?
In my example, if the written statement is sent out, and let's say we're clear to close, we're just waiting for the close date to come around, right? Everything is done. We just need to get to the closing date, which is in 2 days. And they come to you and say, I'm not going to buy this property anymore. I don't want to do it.
Yeah, I think in that example, right, Jason? But here's another. You can go to the opposite spectrum of it, right? Yep. Buyer's going to do a final walkthrough. We got clear to close. Everything's locked and loaded. Funds are sitting at the title company in the escrow, ready to close. We do a final walkthrough with the property morning of, and it's a they threw a raging party last night, and there's holes in the walls. It's like, okay, well, we're closing in hours. Everything was clear to close, but obviously seller didn't keep the property in the condition that it was in when the offer was submitted. So, buyer is entitled to get that earnest money back and doesn't have to buy the property because the seller trashed it, the night before.
So again, that's in the contract though, right? It's in the contract up front that the seller needs to keep the property in the same condition that the buyer saw it as when they made their offer. So, correct. The argument was, in my case, was if everyone follows the contract and someone just has a change of heart at the end, the earnest money is going to be at stake at that point, right?
Earnest money is going to go, well, but here's the thing. Earnest money is going to go to the seller, but that might be the minimum consequence for that.
Yeah,
buyer.
Minimum.
The seller may say, you know what? I don't care that you don't want to buy it anymore. We have a legally binding contract. I am going to sue you for specific performance.
Yeah, you screwed me out of 60 days on the market.
And actually, I'm going to sue you for all the costs that I'm going to incur by not closing because I had another property that I wanted to buy. I'm going to lose that property. I've got all of these additional costs for not being able to close. I'm going to sue you for all of it. And so it's important that buyers and sellers understand, and if they have a really good real estate agent, this agent will explain it to them. You are entering into a legally binding contract. So what you're agreeing to in writing in the purchase agreement, you're legally bound to it. And so there's consequences for not fulfilling what you have legally agreed to do in a purchase agreement contract. And so I definitely, I've had people that over the years, Mike, where they've done that. They've been like, yeah, I just, I don't want to buy it anymore. Okay. Well, you can't just not buy it anymore. What's going on? What's the reason? I just don't want it. Well, okay. You're in a contract, a legally binding contract. You agreed to buy it under these terms at this closing date. You can't just change your mind without consequences. Right. And so, something like that happens. You call the other agent and say, hey, look, here's, this is what I just got this message from the buyer. This is what they're saying. You got to talk to your seller. What do you guys want to do? And then maybe the seller comes back and says, you know what, let's just cancel it. We'll keep the earnest money. We'll go back on the market. Most sellers will take that path because the path of litigation can take a long time sometimes. It definitely is not a cheap path. But the biggest problem is it prevents you from selling the property to somebody else, right? You can't sell a property that's in litigation to somebody else. So
and
most sellers will just say,
let's bring it back to the beginning, right? I mean, that's the value of a buyer putting down a larger dollar amount for earnest money. Because
More
the
skin in
seller
the
looks
game.
at, there's more skin in the game
Yes.
if something foul like that happens, where the seller is in a sense kind of screwed over a deal, and so that's kind of where, in my opinion, that's where that
Yep.
value comes from. With
So,
a
okay,
larger amount.
So now we got to try to put a point value on this. Right? In my head, this is anywhere from a pick six where you don't score any points, just a nice play, right? You get a turnover, you get the ball back, up to field goal, maybe.
Well, pick six is interception.
Or
You
excuse
get
me,
a touchdown.
let's just say not pick six. Sorry, just an interception, not a pick six, just an interception. This is,
gotcha.
I'm thinking that this could be a no point play potentially, because if you put hardly any earnest money up, right, and there's all these strings attached to it, right, depending on how your offer is written, you got all these strings attached to it. So there's not going to be much value there to the seller, right? That's
right.
But if it's a lot of earnest money and you have no strings attached to it, like here's 10,000 in earnest money and it's hard earnest money. Yep. Anything, if we back out for any reason at all, you keep the 10 grand, Mr. Seller. Now that's worth something, right?
That's like a 50-yard fantasy football field goal. Those are worth 5 points.
Yeah.
In fantasy football. So
yeah. I think earnest money, just if you're increasing it, a higher earnest money is maybe worth 3 points. If you make it non-refundable, 8 points all day long.
Really?
Yeah. I mean,
that high?
It's a big deal. I mean, it's because it's non-refundable. It's guaranteed money, right? I mean, the you might make an offer 25 grand over list price, but you still got to close. There's no, there's no guarantee it's going to close. If you write an offer with non-refundable earnest money that goes directly to the seller upon a fully accepted purchase agreement, that's guaranteed money. Seller gets that immediately. No matter what happens, they get it and they get to keep it. So I think that has tremendous value.
Okay. So we're talking this might be an interception all the way up to a touchdown with a 2-point conversion then, depending on how you write your contract with around the earnest money. Okay.
Yeah, depends on the terms.
All right, let's go to the next one here. No inspection. So you're not going to do a home inspection. Hey, seller, I want to buy it here. Not contingent upon a home inspection at all.
I think, I was going to say, if it's in the spring market and in multiple offers, I didn't mean to interrupt you there, Jason, but yeah, multiple offers, and you're the only one whose offer has that, then, tons of value.
Yep. Yeah,
are we talking touchdown? You talking the touchdown type of value? Talking more like field goal? No inspection, more like a...
Are we talking these are multiple offers or just offers?
Multiple offers. You're competing in multiple offers, yeah.
No inspect. It's such a tough question, Mike, right? So, our buyers ask us all the time, do you recommend an inspection? Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely recommend an inspection. The only time that I might not, or just be indifferent about that question is if it's new construction. It's brand new and it just went through a bazillion inspections while it was getting built. Then, maybe it's not as important. Otherwise, do I recommend inspection? Yes, absolutely. If you have an inspection in your offer and we're in multiple offers, there's a good chance that inspection will mean you don't get the offer accepted. So as a buyer, you got to make a tough decision. You got to make a tough decision, right? Do I want the house? Do I want to buy it without the inspection? But that's got to be a buyer's choice. It's got to be their choice. And I've had, buyers in the past where, we have to have an inspection, we lose a couple deals because of the inspection. And they get to the point and they're like, you know what, we're just going to take a really, really close look at this house when we look at it and we show it, tour it for the first time. And if it looks good, we're going to pass on the inspection because we want the house more than the inspection. So, but it's a tough one. It's a tough one to not do that inspection. If it's not multiple offers, almost every seller is cool with an inspection. Multiple offers. If I'm a seller, I'm not going to take the offer that has the inspection with 5 to 7 days on there if there's a similar offer with no inspection, because then I can go right to pending with that offer.
I think that the kicker thing too, when these questions are a real estate transaction is so unique. It's so unique to the specific buyer, the specific seller, the specific property. Is there only one offer? There are multiple offers. So to try to, in general, to give these examples, it is a little tricky. But if we are in a multiple offer, and it's likely that you're not the only one who submitted an offer that's not contingent on a property inspection. So there's kind of that. So if that's the situation, I mean, if this is a, white hot, the flame is just smoking hot type of property, and there's 30 offers, it's like, well, then that's not going to really be worth much, because there's probably half of them are going to have that same term to that offer.
Yeah. Another thing you can do is you can make, let's say it's a $500,000 property, $500,000 property, right? You want the property, you love the neighborhood, love the house, love the design, everything. Maybe you want it so much that you're willing to make an offer way above asking price. Well, if your offer is that much higher than any other offer, but it's like, look, I can't move. I can't feel comfortable about spending $500,000+ without doing an inspection. Maybe the inspection is written like this: we're going to perform a full home inspection, and as long as there's no repairs under $10,000, we're going to move forward with it. So like a pass-fail with a number amount.
Pass-fail,
right?
yeah.
You got a pass-fail inspection. As long as the repairs are $10,000 or less, we're moving forward on the deal. Now, if your offer is higher in dollar amount for a seller, it's like that's reasonable, right? I mean, $10,000, and maybe it's $5,000 or whatever the number is, but I mean, $10,000, that's a whole lot of repairs. I mean, you're talking that's new roof or whatever the deal is. I mean, you're looking for major things. A seller, if they're confident on the condition of their property, they're going to take the offer that's higher in price with an inspection that's pass-fail that has a dollar amount attached to it. So, if you've got a really good real estate agent, someone that's really experienced, you can get creative and still achieve the things that are important to you, like an inspection, without losing the house, by knowing the business and knowing how to write it. And and you got to have conversations with the listing agent. You got to find out what are the sellers like, what's important to them. You got to ask questions. I mean, you would be, well, Marcus, you wouldn't be, but and neither would you, Mike. But I am shocked at times what agents will tell me, about the seller, or about the buyer and stuff, and it's like, thank you. I mean,
thank you.
I'm not helping you at all, but you know what I mean. So but you got to ask questions, and you got to get creative sometimes. Most agents don't have the ability to do that.
Yeah. So again, this is another tough one. It's kind of like, because you can add. It's not just yes inspection or no inspection. You can have yes inspection, but we're not going to ask for anything to be repaired, as long as the total combined whatever's under $10,000 or whatever that is. You can add these caveats to it. So if we try to put a point scale on this one, what are you thinking? At least a field goal?
Yeah.
At least 3 points, possibly 6 points if you write it correctly.
3 points. Yeah.
Or you're giving up points if you're the only one who has the inspection.
Yeah.
You threw the pick six.
Yeah.
Because nobody else had the inspection contingency.
Yeah. So, you did intentional grounding in the end zone, so the other team just got a free safety on you. So, all right, okay, so that's interesting. Let's go to the next one here. We're only on number 5 out of 19. We're going to have to pick this up a little bit. Type of loan,
or finish next week.
Or finish next week. So, type of loan, cash, which is no loan, obviously, but the type of, how are you going to bring your funds to the table? Is it going to be cash, a conventional loan, FHA loan, VA loan, USDA loan? Let's just go straight to cash.
Yeah.
Right. You got a cash offer. You're in a multiple offer situation. You got a cash offer. You can write a cash offer because you got the money. Yep. How many points do you get for having a cash offer versus a financed offer?
Oh, you're getting 8 points.
Touchdown with the 2-point conversion.
Yeah. I mean,
cash is king.
Cash is king.
Still applies till this day.
Okay. Conventional loan offer. So still multiple offers. You can't buy it with cash. So now you're going to go in, but you got a conventional loan.
How much percent down?
Let's say you're 20% down.
That's the question, right? An 80-20?
80-20. Let's say you got a conventional 20% down because I want to avoid the PMI. I got enough to do 20 to avoid the PMI. Boom, that's what I got.
Yeah. And so So we got conventional. So has the cash been taken off the table, or is that still a part of the equation?
No, you
That's
don't.
just number
You
one.
don't have the ability to. You don't have the ability to do a cash offer. So you're in multiple offers. You don't know what the other offers are, right? But I know I can do a conventional loan of 20% down is what I can do.
Yeah. I mean, there's
big.
That's big. I mean, that's arguably the best financing option, and unless you're putting more down. But I mean,
But really, conventional 20% down, conventional with 30% down, 40% down, probably kind of all in the same boat.
Yeah.
Right.
A seller kind of looks at that too. They say, "Wow, okay, this buyer is doing an 80-20 financing conventional loan with how loans are approved today and qualified for. I mean, that buyer is rock solid. Right. That is an exceptional buyer. And a seller looks at it and say, okay, well, we did feel like maybe we were a little overpriced. We're not going to really be concerned about having appraisal issues. There might not even need to be an appraisal being done. With a 20% down, maybe that lender say, hey, you know what, you got 20% down. We don't even need to have the appraisal. So there's some moving parts there that a seller is going to feel, pretty excited about 80-20. I mean, obviously anything better, 70-30, 60-40. The seller's getting happier and happier. But I mean, 80-20 is pretty dang awesome.
And if they're putting that much down, it also gives you some reassurance that if there is an appraisal issue, that there's an ability to resolve it. If you're coming in with minimum down, 3.5% down on FHA or 0% down on VA, and you don't have additional funds available, well, if the appraisal comes in low, the buyer doesn't have the ability to participate in sharing that burden, right? I mean, most of the time, buyers and sellers will share the burden. For example, appraisal comes in, $10,000 low. Most of the time, buyer's going to bring an extra $5,000 cash. Seller's going to accept $5,000 less. But what if the buyer doesn't have the ability to do that? And so, the more money that you're putting down, the more options there are if there is a low appraisal. On the mortgage side, you can get creative and you can, and so 20% or more down on conventional that's as good as financing as you're going to get.
Yep. Okay. So let's go through the loan types here and let's try to put a point scale on it. So cash, no loan, I got cash. That's a touchdown with a 2-point conversion.
Yep.
Okay. What are you giving a conventional loan officer? Loan offer. So conventional loan offer with 20% down. Is that a touchdown, but you missed the extra point?
I'd say that's probably a touchdown with the extra point.
Okay,
yeah,
so that's close.
Yep.
Yep.
So that's a 7-point play versus an 8-point play. So you kick the PAT versus going for a 2-point.
Yep.
On that. Okay, so that's pretty good. How about if we're doing an FHA loan? No points?
No,
one?
I mean you
get 1 point?
I mean,
no,
I'd say-
they're still good loans. I mean, these are still good buyers. Again,
Yeah.
going back to the comment I made, after the financial crisis and different standards were put in place to get these individuals to qualify for home loans. I mean, even if they have a government type back loan like an FHA loan, I mean, they're still really good buyers.
But we're in a multiple offer situation, right? So we got to remember we're competing against other buyers. We're in the multiple offer situation. We're trying to put a point scale on here of what buyers can do to position themselves to be in a better spot with their offer with that seller. So in my book, going FHA, VA, USDA probably gets you 0 points.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, that's
comparing
understandable.
to other
Yep.
options. Yep.
Right?
Agree.
In a multiple offer situation. You take multiple offers out of the equation, right?
Yep.
Right. Now you get points for that, right? Right. Now all those options squeeze a lot further together. They get smushed together.
Yep.
You get multiple offers. You take a FHA offer and a cash offer, and that span is different. I mean, that's
Right.
I mean, you're talking the Grand Canyon type of span there between an FHA and cash, when there's multiple offers. But if there's no multiple offers, right, all those options just they squeeze a lot tighter together and they're a lot more comparable.
Yeah.
I think the price of the home matters too. If you look at if it's a first time, an entry level valued home, there's a good chance that homeowner, used a type of loan like that to buy that. So they're looking at it and say, yeah, I mean, I get that this conventional loan is a little bit better, but I had to get an FHA loan to buy this house. So, if the terms to the offer, maybe this FHA loan does not have a property inspection and everybody else does. A seller might say, you know what, I'm okay working with this one. I'm willing to roll the dice. I had to use an FHA. Seller had to give me a shot too. So, I mean, but if it's like $1 million house, right? And if it's an FHA loan, with the exception of like a HECM for purchase, but, if that's the case, that's like, okay, well, then it's definitely a zero.
Yeah. No points.
That's a great point, Marcus. Had a client, last month, they bought the house with a VA loan, and he wanted to sell it to a VA buyer, and so he was, and now usually, there's this kind of the stigma about VA loans and the appraisals are so tough, and that's, I mean, there's a few extra things that might come up, but it's minimal. I mean, it just, we're not seeing too many appraisal, repair items that come up anymore. But he was like, I want to sell this to a vet, and I'm looking for a buyer that's got a VA loan. I used a VA loan to buy this property, and it worked out fantastic. So depends on the seller a little bit too. But you're right, Marcus. I mean, loans are, they're pre-approved with the top loan officer, top team, loan team. I mean, they're as good as cash.
That's a good point, Jason. Like the loan officer, right? I mean, if you get, if it's somebody who you don't know, nobody knows, the buyer's agent doesn't know, the seller's agent doesn't know, and that's who's the mortgage banker for this buyer. But then the opposite spectrum, I mean, buyer's agent has a long history with this exceptional mortgage banker. The seller knows them because they've done deals with them in the past because they do so much volume. Seller's going to go to the listing agent's going to go to their client and say, hey, I know it's this type of loan, but if it's coming from Mike, it's an awesome buyer. So
I can't tell you. Well, I probably could if I actually calculated it, but the number of deals that we get, that my team gets accepted every single year, because Mortgage Mike Overson is the loan officer. It matters. It matters.
It matters. Yep.
The listing agent knows them because they've done a deal with them in the past, or they know, how the type of business that they do, and it's like, yeah, Mike and his team are doing the loan. You guys are moving to the top because I know you, Jason, and I know your team. I know Mike and his team. I know this deal is going to get done. And so it's a great point, Marcus, because it's a big
no
deal.
Funny business, but no elite communication. Everybody's on the same page. It helps.
So that was the next one.
No call center Jimmy.
I was going to say, Jimmy, if you see Jimmy,
sorry, Jimmy,
from Hope It Closes Mortgage in a completely different state, right? Jimmy from Hope It Closes Mortgage, he does not have a good reputation right there. I mean, to go to that point, that was the next one here too. So, we spoke about the loan types and stuff like that. So the next one was the lender you're working with, right? The pre-approval letter, the lender on that pre-approval letter. What's that point scale worth? Yeah. Side note with what you guys were talking about there, I know for a fact that this RE/MAX office here at one point had a blacklist that was circulating between the agents to say, do not accept an offer with this loan officer as the lender on it. Like literally a blacklist. Like, we've had nothing but issues, nothing but problems. If you see an offer come over with this loan officer on there, don't accept it.
So there may or may not be this blacklist out there of bad loan officers, but but look, it's about reputation in the business, right? And you do a crappy job, or you do shady business, word's going to spread. On the other hand, if you do exceptional business and you're providing the top tier level of customer service for your clients, not just your clients and customers, but the agents that are attached to those clients or customers, that word is going to spread. That's who agents want. They want to work with a mortgage team that they don't have to worry about the mortgage. So I get a pre-approval letter from Mike. I'm not ever thinking about the loan. I'm doing my job and making sure that we get everything done for our client. And I don't think or worry about the mortgage at all. And so, because I know it's going to get done. If Mike says it's going to get done, it's going to get done. And so that's so important. It's so important for agents, but as a consumer, it's so important that you align yourself with a top LO and team, just like you're aligning yourself with a top real estate agent and team.
Just those simple communication things. I mean, Mike and his team, you'll get these emails saying, "Hey, just want to let everybody know the loan has gotten through underwriting or we got clear to close. Here's an email for everybody so that we know." As a listing agent, when I can go tell my seller, "Hey guys, guess what? Got an email from the buyer's lender. We're clear to close." I mean, that makes a seller be like, "Okay, that's awesome, super." Instead of the seller being like, "Hey, where are we at with this? What's the status?" I don't know. I mean, don't get any communication going from these people. So, it's big time.
Or even if the deal derails, right? The loan derails at some point, right? Maybe at a married couple, they're both working, and one of them loses their job along the way. Right? You get some weird situation. Like no one saw that coming, right? The lender did their job up front, couldn't see that coming. The buyer didn't even see that coming, right? It's just out of the blue. How do you manage those things that come up, surprises, and can you work to a solution to keep that train on the tracks and still get to closing? You know what I mean? A lot of loan officers, it's like something derails, they just go in a black hole and they don't tell anyone.
Sorry.
And they don't answer your voicemails, or they don't take your calls. They don't send emails out, right? And everyone's just like, what the heck is going on? Yeah. Just to being able to communicate, to say, hey, look, surprise came up. This is what happened. Here's what we're working on. We don't have a solution yet, but we're working on a solution. We'll be back in touch with you guys when we have one. Then at least people know what's going on. That's all really people want during the transaction is just let me know what's going on. If it's bad news, it's bad news, right? It is what it is. Let's work together as a solution. Because guess what? What does it take to get to a closing? Can a buyer get to a closing by themselves? Can a seller get to the closing by themselves? No. Can a loan officer do a closing with just the loan officer at the closing table?
Teamwork of all parties.
It's all parties. It's the buyer, it's the seller, it's the loan officer, it's both agents involved, it's the title company, it's this whole team. So that's how I treat my transactions. That listing agent is just basically part of the team. We need that listing agent, we need that seller to be with us to get to this closing table. So they need to know what's going on too. So, okay. So point scale. So this is going to be the last one we're going to hit here for today. We'll finish next week, but point scale of the loan officer or lending company that shows up on that pre-approval letter. What's it worth?
I think it's worth a solid 6.
Yeah. Touchdown. That much.
What
Marcus, what did you say?
What was it again? I missed it. I apologize.
Oh, so how many points is it worth with the pre-approval letter with a certain loan officer, a certain lending company on it, right?
What is that worth? It's definitely a touchdown. Yeah,
that's a touchdown. That's worth a 6.
Yeah.
Okay. Very interesting. All right. So we made it through 7 items of the 19. So we're going to continue this.
Hey, this might be a 3-part.
By the end of the year, we will get it finished.
But it was good discussions. I mean, this is important stuff because guess what? Almost every single buyer out there is in multiple offer situations, right? Yeah. So how do you navigate through that? We've spent our careers, putting this list together with our experiences, and now we're ranking them in a point scale so that people can say, look, or we can go to our buyers and say, look, based on these hundreds of files that we've closed in multiple offer situations, right? Here's the things that you can do that will make a big difference. Here's the things that you can do that will be a minimal difference. And here's something you can do that won't make a lick of difference at all. Yep. Right. And it's good to know that up front. So as we bring our show to a close today, we want to thank everyone for tuning in live or catching our show on their podcast service at a later time. You can find us anywhere you find your podcasts and on our website at ushometalk.com. We're here. Marcus Walgrave, we appreciate you listening. We'll see you next week.